Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight. We got a returning guest, James Sanford. Sanford, I don't know why I always say Ford. It's like I read it in my head
Sanford.
and then Sanford. Yeah,
Well, that's how I say it. It is spelled Sanford.
Yeah, I know, but I think it's like when I say your last name, I can just see like the Ford logo in my head, and I just have to say. That's the subliminal marketing right there that ruins your name for me. But
Oh, well, more like the pencil company.
yeah, yeah, sure. But yeah, we got James back. He is the president of the Atheist and Agnostic Club. We had an awesome Atheist and Agnostic Society. We had an awesome conversation last time about religion, and I hope that we can continue the ball rolling because I still have some more questions.
Sure.
And, things I want to talk about. First of all, how you been? How you been the last couple weeks?
Good. Finals and stuff. You know how it is.
How are those?
Oh, I did decent.
You did decent? Okay, so you have your results back.
I have my results for one of them. I don't have the other one yet. And I have one more today later. That's kind of like do it whenever.
Yeah. So. How many credits are you taking this semester?
15.
15? Okay. Is this your last semester? Or do you still have
no,
more?
I have 2 more semesters all over that. That last semester is going to be like one class.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
No, I definitely see what you mean. But so you had 15 credits anyway, too. I mean, that's pretty good. But how is so then you are technically like a junior?
I'm a senior. I've been here 6 years.
Okay. So how is the later years of psychology? And
I like it.
You like it?
Yeah.
Are you glad that you did it?
Yes.
Yeah, because I've always wanted to talk to somebody who's like in a similar major. Because what's your specific major? Is it just psychology or
psychology? And then my minor is human development and family services.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, how was it?
It was good. I really enjoy psychology. And then the minor I think if I would have done it over again, one of the changes I'd do is I'd probably minor in psychology and major in human development and family services.
Okay.
Because that's the one I found myself enjoying my classes more. I still really enjoyed psychology, but I liked the HDFS classes a lot.
Yeah, just like a little bit. Psychology is a really good, same with philosophy, it's a really good just like secondary type thing. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, do you feel like that's like the biggest question that I have for like people who have done psychology and like are graduating by the end of it? Do you feel like you know psychology because of your courses, or is it more just like self-taught thinking, or like
there's a lot of independent research that you get more out of? Like if you just take the classes, you might memorize like some of the theories and the names and stuff, but if you really want to know about it, you need to delve into it yourself.
Okay, so what kind of stuff did you look at? I mean, as like future advice for me to like learn.
Yeah, so the research course, taking a research, being in a research lab will immensely help you, because taking the classes on research isn't enough. What you really learn, how you really learn doing research, things like experiments and studies, is doing them yourself.
Okay.
So it looks really good on your resume, obviously.
Yes.
It's good for getting into grad school.
That's what I've been told.
But yeah, I'd have to say the labs have been the high point of my major.
And so when you do the labs, do you choose what you're doing in them, or what you're learning? Or
so they send out like an email a lot of times, advising people about here's like all the different studies that are going on this year by the grad students and professors, and you're free to like apply to them. And a lot of times you'll want to apply to something that's most interesting to you. Like I actually didn't do that. I'm in my research lab that I'm in is on VR, but I'm actually more interested in relationship psychology. But it doesn't really matter too much as long as you get the research experience.
Yeah, and like seeing what it's like in a lab. And
yeah.
Do you plan on continuing after this, or are you going to be done after this?
Well, I am planning on going to grad school.
Okay.
Not in psychology, but in marriage and family therapy.
Yep. Tell me more about why that. What led you? Because that's a really interesting field of.
So I think I told you this last time, but relationship psychology was my favorite class, and so that's what led me to want to do marriage and family therapy. I knew I wanted to do some kind of counseling, but it was when I took the relationship psychology class, I knew that it was relationship counseling in particular that I found most interesting.
Yeah, I guess like what aspect of like the whole relationship dynamic did you feel like spoke out? Is it because like you're married and?
I mean, that's part of it. I think it gives me I kind of understand it more than like a student that hasn't gotten married yet.
Yep.
A lot of students are in relationships, so it doesn't really mean a lot. Yeah. What I really like is just the dynamics and this. Just it's hard to explain, really. I like that kind of more than one person dynamic. The
Yeah.
like conflict resolution and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's nice to, I mean, in most psychology or counseling situations, you're gonna watch somebody grow or like become better or be a better person from what you did. But to watch two people,
Yeah, that's the big thing with the relationship and marriage counseling is that, like for when you're getting your license, you need to have not only like for like a normal counselor, you need to have so many hours of supervised counseling, but for marriage and family therapy, you also have to have a lot of um, counseling with more than one people, more than one person.
to like handle the dynamic of two people,
Right.
and a lot of time they're gonna be like
two or
fighting.
more. Like sometimes you'll have the kids there too, or something like that.
No, I think that's super interesting, and I love hearing about people like not necessarily having a broad interest, but kind of getting into a much more specific area of anything is always fun to just be like,
Yeah,
why that one?
I've started to really specialize too. Like, so I wrote my my research project for one of my higher level classes in HGFS on purity culture and religious trauma.
Okay.
And my first professor told me, this pastor reached out to me and she wants to like put together like a project on like combating purity culture's like damage to.
What is a purity culture?
So purity culture, it'd be like the true love way. It's like wait till marriage, you're not clean, that kind of stuff. So basically, it's the very. It started. There was a big one in the '70s, and then there was another big wave in the '90s of basically. There was like the book I Just Kissed Dating Goodbye, where the guy who wrote it said that not only should you not like have sex before marriage, but you shouldn't even kiss.
Oh wow! Yeah,
marriage.
I've heard talk about that.
So and a lot of this. So the professor does that. She teaches human sexuality, and there's been a lot of research that this kind of like purity culture has had damaging impacts on people's like sexual health. Like they get married and then they realize they just have no idea what's going on.
And so, is that something that is existing in a more modern time today? Because I'm sure it does.
It's always,
I know
it has always existed, but a lot of the like actual like investigation and research on it is very new.
Wait, so a pastor reached out to you?
No, a pastor reached out to my professor. My professor recommended that I head the project. So
Okay.
this is going to be an independent study, like supervised independent study for me next semester.
Okay, and so is the pastor going to be involved in this project?
Yes.
And then so this pastor would
I'm
obviously
basically
like,
I'm basically going to be like the go-between between the professor and the pastor.
just kind of like another like I guess worker on the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
I haven't gotten all the details on it yet, but it does sound interesting.
that sounds super interesting. And it's kind of like a lab, but you're working with somebody who
Basically.
actually has the influence to, I mean, do that. That's the kind of the thing that surprises me the most is that you'd think that a pastor would be the one that would be the most against a project that really calls attention to any of this. And then so for the pastor to be the one that is reaching.
My professor gave me a book before I left for break that was like written by a pastor about the same thing, like about how purity culture has hurt her like congregation and stuff.
And so I guess what specific issues do you tackle with purity culture? Like what would be like the elevator speech if you were to pitch me to talk about purity culture and say like purity culture is bad for this reason or it affects these people in this way? Like,
there's a lot of different reasons, but like a lot of it is basically just the amount of shame and trauma that it projects on the person. Like especially women, they feel like it's their job to like police how they look or how they dress for men because men just can't control themselves, and so it's the women's job to do that. That's a big one. But it's hurt men too because men are taught that they have to be masculine and they have to fit the certain mold that a lot of people just don't. Maybe you're creative or shy or something like that, and that's just not who you are.
Yeah, or different in general. And,
Yes.
And it's nice to cultivate that. I didn't even think about purity culture extending to like I guess the male end, there is a purity culture for male end of just like males should wait to have sex before marriage as well. But like even beyond that, but with I mean the stereotypes and the norms that people are normally supposed to fit into, like that checks out. That makes sense. And I think it's interesting. It's interesting, especially in the field of psychology and religion, how everyone could, if I said do research on something psychology related, everyone could come up with something different. And this is such like a specific area that talking about purity culture specifically in religion, especially being the head of like the Atheist and Agnostic Society, as well as being a psychology major who is going into relationship therapy and like a marriage
it all just
counseling.
fits together.
It's like it's like this is the area that was made for you to research. So I mean that's super interesting. You will have to keep me updated on how it goes. I guess what kind of insights would the pastor? What kind of insights are you expecting to get from the pastor, or like what do you think? What are you expecting from all of this when it comes to working on this?
So, I think it's really important to have the actual like pastor in the input from a pastor, because as someone who has I mean I have a religious background, have been raised religious, but having someone who is still dealing with it on a day-to-day, I think adds a perspective that would be missing otherwise.
An important one, and to talk to somebody who is directly involved in something like this. I mean, that's super good too. Yeah. How has the club gone? How's
so I'm actually because I'm graduating so soon, I'm actually not doing it anymore myself. I'm right now looking for someone to take over.
Oh.
I'm still active in like the different things. Like I know Reason on the Hill is coming up at the Capitol, and that's the Iowa Atheists is doing that. So I probably will still do that. But I just because I've been so swamped, I've started to move away from the club stuff.
No, I mean that's
so
good.
right now our club is gone inactive until either someone else decides they want to do it, or maybe our advisor will find someone who wants to do it. Who knows?
Yeah, calling all atheists and agnostics.
If anyone wants to head up the club, it looks very good on your resume to be the leader of a club.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is your plug. We're gonna put this out, calling all calling all atheists. Well, the last time we had a conversation, you had said that the next topic, or I guess the next meeting you guys are going to talk about counterfactuals. How did that go?
It went all right. We only had one person show up. And interestingly, it wasn't the person who asked for the topic.
Weird.
Yeah, but it was interesting.
So what did you guys talk about?
We talked. Oh, let's see. Man, it was a while ago, wasn't it? We talked about the watchmaker argument.
What is that?
So the watchmaker argument, actually, it was one of the topics we just talked about right before we got out. It's basically you walk along the beach, you find a watch, and you believe, and because of how complex the watch is, you say that this watch obviously has a maker, and basically it's trying to extrapolate this out that because the world is so complicated, it also has to have a maker like the watch.
Okay.
So the big arguments against this would be so the world comes about through a lot of processes and stuff, and it doesn't necessarily need a maker. The watch is actually just an extension of that, as we are also part of that world, and we're going to be. And so if a human made the watch, we wouldn't say that. So basically, you can bring it back to the start. If there is a creator who made the watch, that creator would also have to have a creator, or else he wouldn't have a start.
Okay.
Now we're getting into a lot of philosophy.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I'm super into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's, to paraphrase, it's the concept that something doesn't necessarily have to have a creator, because if something created it, it would then have to be created.
That's one argument for you.
Okay. What other counterfactual?
So it'd be the one I said before, which is basically the sum is whole of parts or whatever. I can't remember exactly how my professor said it, but I'm not very good with these
kind of explanatory.
Yeah, it was a challenge for me, which is why I wanted to do it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you're able to sit up here and just talk about this and just have this kind of conversation is good enough. You know what I mean? Even if you're not able to recite the whole slew of
it's probably
things
better
in the best
than just
way.
rattling it all off from memory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you could admit that hey, I might not be able to do this justice, then that's just how it is. Look
it up yourself. It'll be more interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be more interesting if you do your own research.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. How does a conversation how would you say a conversation with somebody normally goes? Like, if you were to logically step out, like, let's say that I was like a super Christian and then you were like a super atheist. Like, how would this conversation go? And like, where are the points that you disagree? So it's like, if I come up to you and I hear that you're an atheist and I say that God's real, or like, how do you not believe that God's real? What do you say?
Well, I mean, I would say that it's possible God's real. I just don't see any evidence for it.
Okay. And so, I mean, what do they say? What would somebody say back to that? Like, the biblical is like,
they'll give you
they say the Bible is a record.
They'll usually give you a giant list of reasons, like the Bible said so, and all that. Like, most of them are just, they sound really good to someone who's been brought up as a Christian or is like a devout Christian. But if you look at it from like an outside perspective, it's just not convincing.
Yep. And it all just kind of depends on the perspective that you have.
Oh yeah.
And what's that Albert Einstein quote? It's like, whether or not you believe you can or can't, you're probably right. It's kind of like the same thing. It's like if you walk into someone trying to tell you something's real, your perspective is going to make the truth to you, no matter what it is. And so, I think a lot of people would say that, because what I've heard is that like the Bible is written over thousands of years, and it's a collection of stories that are written not in time as to when they happened, but like, it wasn't all just written one day.
Right, they're recounts of like spoken stories.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've even heard that like there are sections of the Bible near the beginning, like Genesis and stuff, that's written, and then later in the Bible, even like in the Old Testament, like that was written 100 years later. You know what I mean? And so like you have the beginning of and it's almost like a journal, like a cataloging as well as recounting of stories. So all those events didn't happen in that like time frame, but they were written. They were written over time as like stories were told and things happened and like everything. And I mean, I didn't know, or I had never heard that before, but I do think it puts an interesting perspective on like the Bible almost being like historical in that sense.
Oh, it really is a very historical book. Yeah,
because it's almost, especially when you have the New Testament, because one of my buddies had described the New Testament to me in a way that I had never heard it before. He was like, so basically they had written the Old Testament and then they thought that God was too harsh and they thought that he was too mean. So they wrote a new one to like tell all the stories to make God seem like nicer, to make God
him easier to follow.
Yeah. To make it easier to follow, which was like, and he's a really religious person. So to hear him say it in that perspective was like, wait, hold on. Yeah. Like, why would you talk about it like that? Yeah. And then you have the Book of Mormon, which is, I mean, obviously a whole other, but it's still like Christian. They do like the Old Testament, New Testament, and then the Book of Mormon, which is like the third book.
You just add another one.
Yeah, just add another one. And then it's like, at that point, like you can say, like that's where it starts getting fishy. I think the only thing that like really brings in the New Testament is that it's written somewhat after the Old Testament, like in the same time. But like the Book of Mormon was written like thousands of years later. It's like
well, I mean, like,
or something.
If you can also go in the opposite direction and bring it back even farther. Like, so if you just take like the Old Testament and like just like the Jewish version of like the Torah, then it splits and you get Islam and Christianity.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I did not know that. Wait, so are you saying that Islam is?
It's an Abrahamic religion. It's an offshoot.
Wow.
Just like Christianity.
I did not know that. Those are things that people don't really tell you. That's what I'm telling you. That's why I need to take a world religions course.
I don't know if they take all of the books, but like a lot of those stories are like part of their religion and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they believe that instead of Jesus being the Son of God, they just believe he was another prophet.
Yeah, which is something that I have heard, but I think a lot of people that talk about like the Islamic
I'm certainly
religion,
not as well read in Islam as I am in Christianity, just because of how I grew up.
Yeah, that's I think
So
a lot of
maybe
people.
I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think a lot of people who talk about the Islamic culture don't.
They have no idea.
They don't
like
really
me.
know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'd imagine that you probably know more than other people, but I mean, you'll have
Maybe
people
a
talk
little
about it. But yeah, but not enough to write home about, but enough to say.
Don't claim to be an expert.
Yeah, yeah, which is, it sucks that you like have to admit that.
No, it doesn't.
You know what I mean? Well, no, it's responsible of you to admit that.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice if people just listen to you with that perspective of just like,
yes,
you don't know like you don't know everything because like that's kind of what sucks the most is that people will listen to you talk or me talk and be like,
well, they obviously know what they're talking about.
They obviously know what they're talking about because they can talk about it with confidence.
Yeah.
Which like anybody can do. An actor can talk with confidence. That doesn't mean that an actor knows what they're talking about.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of one of the things. I used to do this thing called edgy meme of the day, which was so funny. Or just like it's sophomore year of high school. I'd post like I post a meme every day just calling out social behavior pretty much. And then like one of them I was saying was, I wrote this like book about like this expectation that you need to know something or had to have experienced something. And then also feeling like you have to clarify that you know something and like how both of those just create like a toxic conversation.
Oh yeah.
Because if I was constantly telling you, like if I was constantly justifying why I know something, conversation would suck.
It would suck. It'd be boring.
Yeah. And like if you were constantly begging me to justify every claim I make, that would also
evidence,
suck.
Evidence.
Yeah, that would also suck.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I thought it's a super interesting thing. But what I actually wanted to talk to you was the First Amendment Club. Are you still going to that? What is that? You put that on your questionnaire, and I actually reached out to them to talk to them. But
you should have them.
I haven't gotten a response.
I went to the last First Amendment Club meeting was actually on religious freedom, and we had a pastor come in and talk about that.
Wow, how'd that go? Walk me through that.
It went really good. I really enjoyed it. Me and him really, we had points of agreement, but we also had a lot of points of disagreement. Like, he obviously had like opinions about like gay marriage and stuff that I didn't have. But I think we really like both like agreed that like religion should not be coerced onto other people, and that was a big thing. We talked a lot about some of the more recent like legal decisions by the Supreme Court.
You were telling me about the one of the football coach.
The football coach, yeah, we talked about that. And we talked about the adoption.
What did he have to say about those?
So for the football coach, he said he had a different opinion than me. Like I thought that what the football coach was doing at the center line could be considered coercive, and he thought that it was just like a personal expression by himself.
Okay, yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking too. That it's hard to know the difference, but both possibilities.
It's a difficult line to draw.
Yeah,
which is why you can have disagreements on it. In good faith on both sides.
Yeah, yep, yeah, and I think it's like it's responsible to say like it could just be that, but it could also be coercion. Like you kind of have to accept both sides and be like, a bad possibility does exist. We should acknowledge that at the very least. But yeah, I mean, so what is First Amendment Club, and like, what have you gained from that?
First Amendment Club, and I probably can't do it just as much justice as the people actually run it.
Yeah, I'm trying to have them on, but if you want to be my inside man and tell me, like, I'm on this podcast.
Yeah, but the First Amendment Club is basically they just talk about the First Amendment. Like I know they had I think it's the ACLU here.
I don't
remember. I don't remember. I didn't go to a lot of their meetings just because of schedule conflicts. But I went to like the first and the last meetings, and I really enjoyed those. Yeah,
those are super cool because it also says that you on the questionnaire it said that you're politically active.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So I consider myself an independent, but I am on the Democratic side. So like every year when election season gets close, I change to Democrat, and then I do all the things like the primary, and then I like the last few years I've gone to like the platform committee. They'd like discuss like the actual platform of the county, like what we think should be, how we think we should be pushing legislation. And then this year I went to not just the county, but I also went to the district and the state convention. And so for the platform committee, I was the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. So this is like because of like my psychology background, that's why I learned it. And so basically, it's basically we decide like what policies at a state level we think are important to the Democratic Party.
And so like your job mostly is to like advocate and teach people about those policies, not to actually make the decision.
Correct. So this is an aspiration. The platform for the party is an aspirational document. It's not legislation. So it'd be like we care about we want like more research in like psychedelic psychotherapies because and things like that, like working on like more mental health bed availability in Iowa, stuff like that. So the platform in particular would be so there's a county, district, and state, and so these are like local things. So a lot of it's more things that are important to us locally, like CAFOs for the agricultural students, like stuff like that.
Okay, and so like, one, that's actually really cool. I didn't know that stuff like that existed. So like, how those go is, it's a bunch of chairmen meet together and decide as to what like Iowa State or Ames is, or the county, like what they want to push.
Yeah, where we think we should be going with upcoming legislations.
And so where does that information go?
It goes up the ladder all the way to national, where they combine. Each platform gets kind of condensed and combined into like the National Democratic Platform. And then this platform is like what the party as a whole says we care about and we want to be pushed. And then that kind of gives legislators an idea of what their like constituents actually care about.
Okay, interesting.
And then it's up to the legislators to decide whether they're going to listen to what the constituents care about or what their donors care about.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm an independent.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times sorry. A lot of those times those don't align.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah. And is there a Republican equivalent to that process?
I believe they have a platform too. The last time around, I think they actually didn't do a platform. I can't remember the reasoning why they didn't do that. But usually they do have a lot of these same things, the platforms, the committees, the convention, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd imagine because, I mean, especially with Iowa State, you're splitting pretty, more so, because most colleges, you could argue, are like mainly Democrat. But
Iowa State's different.
Iowa State, yeah, because it's Iowa Agriculture Engineering College.
Yeah, like, the pastor was talking about that at the First Amendment Club. We were talking about, like, he was talking about like, all the different, like, First Amendment issues at other colleges, and I was saying, like, you may be right about, like, the colleges in, like, Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
But not here at Iowa State. No. And it's like, he's like, well, I can see that. You're right. Iowa State is one of the best colleges for the First Amendment in the country. And he said it's a lot of the like, technical colleges, agricultural colleges have that aspect. And I'm not surprised.
Yeah, what do you think that is?
I think it's just values of that, like the values, they just kind of connect better, I guess. Like if a lot of the colleges that focus more on like I know Iowa University has, because they're like medical school, for some reason they tend to lean more left than Iowa State, which is like technology and stuff. I don't really know why that is. It must be something that's just inherent with like that particular like interests sets. They kind of like correlate.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why.
Yeah, you could probably make a bunch of judgments that might have meaning, but like you're not supposed to talk about them. Like, I don't know.
Well, you never know.
Like, yeah, like you'd think that's how it is, and then you actually pull a statistic and you're just completely wrong. So
and like no correlation doesn't.
Yeah, there's like there's like no, there's no just there's a bunch of reasons as to why you could try to predict that, but there's almost no point in doing that. And so with the first, I mean, do you think there's a correlation between being generally Democrat and then also your religious views? Do you think that there's a correlation? Because I feel like there absolutely is a correlation between being Republican and then more Christian views. I do think that there is.
Yes, because being a Republican, by extension, probably conservative would want to like conserve the values of old, and so they're less likely to embrace a change. So I've been Christian my whole life. I'm not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, and this isn't always the case. There are probably the majority of Democrats are also Christian, just like Republicans, but they may have a higher degree of people who are either not religious or at least maybe less devout, less religious. And they're more open to just more change in society, I guess.
Yeah, yep. And I think that's why they've been labeled themselves as like progressives, because it's like progressing towards something
right.
new, like any progression. Yeah, that makes sense. I was just seeing if like you had made
that same
observation.
Connection.
Yeah,
somewhat. Yeah,
yeah, because that's something that I would probably assume.
Yeah, well. I don't consider myself a Democrat per se. Like I said, I only switched to Democrat so I can actually participate in the politics.
Yeah. Yep.
I consider myself an independent.
So where is that line then? So like, what separates you from just being
I think the problem is just the system is just two parties. Like in like other countries, I would probably be like, I don't know, like a Green Party or something like that. I don't know. There's just the biggest problem is there's only two viable parties, and so there's not enough choices for people.
I guess so. Like, what if you were to list like the big ticket left or big ticket Democrat values and big ticket right values? What makes it to where you're not Democrat? Like, what do you think? So, like, for me,
I care more. I would consider myself a libertarian socialist. I think, did I talk about this last time?
You mentioned that you were socialist, but you hadn't
So
gone into detail
on
about
economic issues, I leaned in a socialist, more of a like democratic socialist. So like capitalism with limits, basically.
Okay.
But on the social issues, I am very libertarian. I think that you should be able to do what you want, and the government has no right to like interfere.
That makes a lot of sense. Being like with the religious persecution that you're talking about and like all that. So I guess that makes sense. And
I think that recently a lot of the like Democrats who are hard Democrat they've started to gain a kind of authoritarian streak that really troubles me.
Okay, like what? Like what would you?
A lot of the like speech policing, especially online. Like I know there's right now there's that big fight between Elon Musk and Twitter and all that stuff, and all the like really like hard Democrats are arguing like no, Twitter was in their right to censor things, and I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
The best argument against speech that you think is wrong is just more speech.
Yeah, yeah, and that's always what I've encouraged, because I won't say with who, but I had a conversation with somebody about being on this podcast. And I said that I was, I'd say I'm like center right. I'd say I'm like independent, like, but I'll probably vote Republican. But I like to be in the middle and then move wherever I think.
Right.
But, and you could just tell that kind of turned them off. And I don't know if they're going to be on this podcast now, you know what I mean? Because they were more on like the left end of things. And like, we don't have to talk about politics at all. And that's what I told them.
It's more interesting when you don't agree.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I've reached out to every single group, both left and right, conservative. The only ones that have responded was YAF, but I hope the other ones are going to respond to. But
maybe you just need to get bigger.
Yeah, as I say, I'm not even kidding. Once I hit like 15 episodes, I'm going to resend out all the emails and be like, check out the content that I've put out. Because before it was just like, I'm a dude wanting to do a podcast. But yeah, and you could tell that they just were not interested in being on it. And it's like, if you're not willing to talk about something that you disagree with, that should make you uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
Like if I'm not willing to, if I have a belief and I'm not willing to talk about it with someone who disagrees, that should just that should instantly be a red flag.
Rethink your argument.
Yeah, like really rethink the argument. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's nice to hear that free speech is important to you, because I think that like the Democratic Party is strong except for on the free speech issue. And I think that's the one that they're getting flagged for the hardest.
I do, yeah. I think it's a lot more trouble with like the higher, like the more like, I think they're like the professional managerial class, like the high end people and like the administration, stuff like that. But I think if you like dig down to like the more working class roots and like the unions and like the like actual like people in the state, I think they care a lot more about free speech.
Yeah, because everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be able to say things.
People in power want to retain power, and a good way to do that is to just
control speech. Yeah, is to control speech. And I it's definitely refreshing to hear you talk about that. And it doesn't surprise me, because you literally talked about last episode being able to like express your religion, being able to be like who you want to be, and I never called being like atheist or agnostic a religion, but that's like literally what it is. It is a religion. And so
it's I wouldn't call it a religion per se, but it is kind of like a life.
It should have the same rights as a religion.
Yes.
Yeah, because like my religion is no religion. You know, my religion is not.
Yeah, on my check box. No.
Yeah, yeah, like you could say. Yeah, it's like that should be that should have the equal rights as to somebody who,
right.
Yeah. And so it doesn't surprise me that you're a free speech advocate.
Yeah.
I want to talk about gay marriage. Are you cool with that?
Sure.
Yeah. I had just watched.
I guess that is a hot topic right now.
Yeah. So I have to, warn. I will literally talk about anything. So no issues with me. But I just watched the Joe Rogan episode with Matt Walsh. Do you know who? Are you familiar with those people?
Tangentially aware with Matt Walsh.
Yeah, completely. You don't really have to know, but they talked about like the LGBTQ community for like 2 hours, and then like the last hour of their conversation was talking about gay marriage. And I really encourage you to listen to that. It is the most uncomfortable conversation I've ever heard in my whole life.
Let me guess, did Joe Rogan just rake him over the coals about it?
Yeah, well,
sounds about right.
Yeah, it was. What I say.
Joe Rogan has that same like social libertarian attitude.
Yeah, I'd say how it went is Matt Walsh, you could tell he was uncomfortable with the questions, and that like he was realizing that he was falling into the same traps that he gets on the LGBTQ community for doing. And he was falling into the exact same things.
Yeah.
And like you could tell he was getting uncomfortable with it. And like you'd have the questions and just the argument made zero sense to me. It made actually zero sense to me. And like I've even heard better arguments from people.
Yeah.
But he's supposed to be like a representative for this topic. And I was like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. So like basically here's how the argument went. Traditionally marriage is between a man and a woman, and because of it was between a man and a woman for the purpose of conceiving children. And even if men and women don't conceive children together, they have the potential to conceive children together. So it should be incentivized that we have men and women be married. And that's traditionally how the definition is. So if you take away that definition by allowing gay marriage, if you take away that definition, then it no longer means anything. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
That's what I was listening. And like Joe was like, yeah, but that's not what marriage has to mean.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, traditionally, I was like,
it's not like if you legally make marriage between a man and a woman, that suddenly gay men and gay women are just suddenly going to have heterosexual sex and have children.
That's another thing. It's not
how it works.
Yeah, it's not like they're not going to exist. And I understand, like, if the country's purpose is to increase population and have children, sure, that's fine. But that's not what the purpose is.
No.
Like the purpose is not to just like have children. The purpose is just to like give people freedom and make people happy.
Yeah.
That's like really what it is. And so I just could not understand the topic, because the way that gay marriage has always been described to me, and my thoughts on it have always been, I think that the people in general who are fighting for gay marriage shouldn't be fighting for marriage. They should be fighting for other alternatives to marriage, to make those, because there are like alternatives to marriage that aren't the same thing, and they give you the same financial and legal rights as marriage.
That's what the pastor
but they're not
was saying
legal.
at First Marriage.
They're not legal everywhere,
Right.
and it's like we should fix that first and then tackle the marriage thing.
Yeah.
But the marriage thing seems kind of like, I just want the church, for a lot of people, it seems like I just want the church to say that they're wrong about it, because the church is wrong about it. They should marry gay people, but whether or not they legally have to or don't have to, that's where like the difference is. You know what I mean? And so it's like, for me personally, I don't understand why the fight is so hard against gay marriage and not hard enough against like other like civil unions or like,
I feel like it's just not
tranquilities.
talked about because marriage is just the big issue, the big thing that everyone's talking about. I think they feel like they end. See, I don't know a lot about like civil union law and stuff like that, so I couldn't tell you what the difference between that and like an actual marriage is. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if like a civil union and a marriage, if you have the same like tax rights and stuff like that.
I've been told. I haven't done a ton of research, but I've been told that they are the same. That they give you the same rights, but I think it's a big social thing.
Yeah,
and that like
it ends up being a very like social and cultural thing. Like even if you're like a gay couple, that marriage is more. It has a more deeper feeling than saying I'm having a civil union.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get. It's like, oh, me and my husband just got civil unioned. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it doesn't feel as committed.
Yeah, it doesn't feel as powerful.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that's like a culture thing where it's like you're raised your whole life to want to be married.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so I think what Matt Walsh ended up saying was just like they can get married. We should just call it something different, is what he said.
Yeah, that's the problem. Because it doesn't mean the same thing.
Yeah. It's like, well, if you call it something different, then it's not what they're fighting for.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I guess I understand the fight, but I think there are smaller issues that should be fought first before you go and tackle, because
I think a lot of Christians have kind of moved on from this.
Yeah. And I think I'd say a general movement towards acceptance in like the whole country is like allowing people to just kind of we can let them go.
I feel like if you give it like a generation or two, this will never come up.
Really? Yeah, I believe that too.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I never
It'll
even predicted
it'll
the
be
future
like
of it.
the same thing as people like not fighting for anti-miscegenation laws, like not being able to a white person not being able to marry a black person.
Oh yeah. It's just
It'll
gonna
be like
history.
that. It's like, what do you mean?
Like yeah.
Why would that be an issue?
Yeah. You're like thinking about it and you're like, I can't believe people thought it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they had their Bible verses to justify that one too.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah, and that's a big argument that I've been hearing too about like.
I think that was in this new law too, because.
What is that new law? I saw news on that. What?
Yeah, what was it, like the Defense of Marriage Act?
Yeah.
So, the Supreme Court, when they struck down abortion, they said specifically Clarence Thomas said that under this justification, technically you could also strike down the law that the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage. I think it's Obergefell.
Yeah, people were
under the same justification, and so many people thought, okay, so this is where the Supreme Court's probably going to go next, and so we should preempt it by just legislating it into law.
Yeah,
just in case.
Yeah,
and Thomas didn't say this, but under the same justification, it could also be used to strike down the old Supreme Court case that made it so that you can't make it legal for like a black person and a white person to get married.
Yep, I did.
And I think all the people were pointing out the reason why Clarence Thomas didn't point this out was because he's black and he's married to a white woman.
Yeah, yeah.
So he couldn't say that, or his wife would be upset.
Yeah.
His marriage wouldn't work out if that was the case. So so this new law it codifies gay marriage as legal. It also codifies that you can't like make a law against like black and white or like interracial marriage, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there was the carve out, and this is how they managed to get enough Republicans to join onto the bill to get it through, was that they put some like religious liberty exemptions in so that like a pastor can't be forced to like have like a gay marriage in their church or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel like it should be. I feel like that's like a good idea to just everyone should have the right to marry who they want to marry, because like why not? You know what I mean? But like if you really hate it and you are like an ordained minister, you should be able to say no.
Yeah,
and then
it would be
never get to marry anybody.
It'd be a shitty wedding if the person who's officiating it absolutely hates your guts.
Yeah, so it's like why even?
So I mean, it doesn't really make a big difference.
Yeah. So I think that's a good idea. I did hear about like I had been convinced that it was kind of an irrational fear to be scared that, especially the interracial marriage thing that one seemed.
I think the issue was that it was just the fact that technically that justification could be
yeah.
And so it's like we just need to close this gap just in case.
Yeah. And I think that's a good idea. There was definitely a lot of fear when the Roe v. Wade came out.
I think it's possible that gay marriage might have been struck down by the court just because of how lopsided the court is now. Like there's 5-3, right?
That's what I've heard, but
anyway, yeah, it's so lopsided that it's likely that any decision is going to go that direction.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I don't know if they would have gone. I won't even try to predict something.
Yeah,
I could see it. I would not agree with it in the same way that I wouldn't agree with a law that like makes people marry like same sex if they really don't want to. Like I wouldn't agree with either side of that law.
Either way, it's like forced speech.
Yeah, it's the same thing about like freedom of religion, freedom of
speech,
expression, freedom of and that's why I say like it's not necessarily freedom of religion anymore when you are being denied like federal and financial advantages. You know what I mean? So it's like that's kind of where the issue came with like these are alternatives that could give you similar advantages that are only legal in 5 states. Or like 10 states, and it's like why aren't we noticing that? Like we should work on that real quick and fix that because that's one ridiculous. Because some people don't even want to get married, so it's like they should be able to get the same liberties, same financial freedom as other people. You know what I mean? So, but still, I always thought it was something that was kind of slept on, like just an idea of like there are alternatives, just society doesn't talk about them, and they're not legal enough. And I think that's something that the community might want to look at, or they could keep going after the gay marriage thing, and they could definitely be successful.
I feel like
this is a success.
This fight is close enough to one that you might not need to worry
need to worry about the other stuff. That's not. I think when I had come to that conclusion, it was like 3 years ago, and so things are definitely different now.
It's funny how fast things have moved because I can remember when that Supreme Court decision came up. I don't know how old were you when that happened.
The
Obergefell decision that legalized gay marriage from the Supreme Court.
Oh my God, I was like 14.
Okay.
I'm not sure. At least that's when I was hearing people talk about it. So I don't know when exactly it got put in because I've only been political for like 2 years now. So it's kind of a new thing. But I mean, I remember the conversation.
Everybody talked about it even if it weren't political. It's such a big topic.
Yeah. And that's what I was not expecting, and I don't think anybody was expecting the LGBTQ topic to have lasted as long as it has. Because like 10 years ago, you'd have a conversation about that, and like it's completely different than the conversation now.
Right.
And it just like jumped out. And I'd even argue that it's the most talked about or contentious topic right now, like in time.
Like
I can't think of another
community, like civil rights in particular, or gay marriage in particular.
Like the civil rights of the LGBT, and just like the more social, the social war between that, like that, I feel like is the most talked about, or at least in my field of the media I consume.
Right.
That's the most talked about easily, and I don't think anybody could have predicted that 15 years ago, which is what's the craziest about it. But yeah, no, that I do think it's cool that you're on the board of for the Democratic Party that kind of like consolidates.
That was doing the Health and Human Services.
Yeah, the Health and Human Services. That's actually super cool.
Yeah.
What were some of the policies that you helped like write in?
Big one was psychedelic psychotherapy. There's a lot of recent studies indicating that using like psychedelics like psilocybin are a really good way alongside like traditional talk psychotherapy for like PTSD, because the psychedelics, they will like suppress a lot of like the fear response, and so then you can dive deep into it. And these studies have shown that like people have been able to recover, like it's been untreatable PTSD, and then they go through the psychotherapy with the psychedelics, and now they don't even have the symptoms of PTSD anymore.
And are they still like on the psychedelics after their?
No, the psychedelics are only administered during talk therapy. That's it.
That would be the big question, but I think that's a relatively new.
So actually, it's not new. It's a rediscovered.
Okay.
So originally, there were some psychedelics that were originally being used by psychotherapists, and then like people who like make and sell drugs realized the potential of it as like an actual like party drug, and so I think this was MDMA in particular for this one. So then it started being sold as like a party drug, and that's when like the government came in and like stamped it out.
Okay.
And then the like people who were using it in like a medical setting like went to the government like, you're obviously ignoring like the actual benefits of using it in a medical sense. And like the courts agreed, yeah, you're right, and so they scheduled it back down to being able to use. And then the Drug Administration, whatever it's called,
The DEA.
yeah, DEA, they just went and reclassified it back up.
Okay.
And this happened like a couple
Just
times.
like jumping up and down of
Yeah.
like whether or not.
And then eventually it just became such a hassle that a lot of the psychotherapists who used it just stopped.
And so now is it back?
It's coming back, and it's actually the FDA is close to approving it as a they're classifying it as a breakthrough therapy, and it's being studied right now.
And so this is like, so when you were asking for like more allocation of like funds and
Yes,
like,
research, you know, and if it's actually, if the studies come back and they say it's actually effective, which it looks like it's going to be, then I think this should be the next step in psychotherapy.
That's all. And do you think this only is going to apply to like PTSD, or do you think this
PTSD is a big one, but really drug-resistant depression, I think, was another one. Any time, like, because of the way that the fear response works and how the psychedelics suppress it so that you can do like reliving memories and stuff like that. That's why it's so good at what it does.
And so like a lot of like trauma victims or
Right.
like, of not necessarily it has to be full blown PTSD.
Right.
But
Any kind of trauma or maybe anxiety disorder, stuff like that.
And how personally are you like excited about this research and like?
I just find it interesting, to be honest. I'm not really into drugs myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a couple people.
I was going to ask you next.
I know a couple people who have more interest in this kind of thing than I do. But I'm looking at it more from like an actual like psychological medical perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to make sense. How do you feel about just like medication, drugs in general, like when it comes to
I've kind of
mental health?
gone through different things over the years, and to be honest, I don't really know.
Okay.
Like I've heard the arguments on both sides that like right now psychiatrists are too dependent on giving out medication, and not enough on like actual like behavioral interventions. Yeah. And I can see the arguments on both sides that like maybe you do need medication or not. And I haven't had enough classes and research on my own and to have an opinion either way.
What would your, for the sake of conversation, what are you leaning towards? Like, what are your inklings for it? Like,
I mean, I'd probably just take a middle of the road kind of thing. Like, I think medication is something that should be used alongside traditional like therapy.
Yeah, I'd say in general, I'm definitely not educated enough to make like a statement, to make like a public statement. But from the things I've heard, and especially, I don't know, it's such a funny source to say, but Dr. Phil specifically.
Oh boy, I don't like Dr. Phil.
I was not a fan of Dr. Phil either.
Yeah.
Until I heard him talk about this.
Yeah.
And just like the way he communicated, he actually allegedly. He was like in front of the Senate, like Dr. Phil talking to the Senate, talking about overprescription of opioids when it comes to.
Opioids
are different.
You're right.
Different.
That's not a psychological issue. That's like an addiction.
It's actually a chemical.
Yeah,
like a chemical imbalance,
the problem is just how addictive it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was saying
that's definitely a problem. Overprescription opioids, and there's a reason for that. It's because the drug companies make a bunch of money off of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, couldn't that be transferred to these other psychedelics? Is it a company that makes them? Like, I know they're not as chemically addictive.
It wouldn't be a problem right now.
But like, if it were to if it were to make a mainstream.
Well, the difference for the psychedelic psychotherapy in particular, you're only taking it at the actual therapy
Therapist office, yeah.
Right. You're not like taking it home and taking one a day or anything like that.
Okay. That actually is, because that was one of the things. That's why I asked you, did they continue after?
Right.
That's like because that was one of my questions. I do see the difference, but I mean, you could say that the therapists who are performing this are still getting paid by or still paying the
right.
But I don't think that that's an extreme enough example to say.
Psilocybin, you can just grow yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it'd be difficult to find drugs that are similar to, or like that you couldn't find them on your own or do it on your own. But I mean, still, it's definitely always been an interesting conversation. And when I was in high school and I knew that I'd be pursuing like psychology and everything, I figured that I was hoping that I would get taught that a lot of mental illnesses, like they take an approach that's a more behavioralist approach.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, and what I've learned though is that like that is not always what you should do. Like a lot of people have an actual chemical imbalance in their brain that does not produce enough of the hormone that makes you happy, and like they need some assistance on that. And it's a good perspective to have that like not everybody can just be fixed with behavioral things. What I wish that they talked about though is that like what I wish I had learned, or what I wish I would be learning in psychology is that there is an overprescription problem, and like there are people who maybe don't need the medication but are getting medication anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah,
I think that's probably likely. I'm not pursuing a career in psychiatry, so I'm not going to be have to worry about.
Yeah,
I don't prescribe meds.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But I think like in the field of psychology, you're going to have people who like are dependent on some sort of medication or are requesting some.
A
sort
lot
of
these
medication.
meds, they'll like lose their effectiveness over time, and then you'll have to find something else,
like something stronger or something more, or like something that lasts longer or something along those lines. I've always thought it's an interesting conversation, but yeah, if you're gonna go into marriage counseling,
I'm not sure about
hopefully you're not gonna be dealing with people who are on the boat, you know. So yeah, but I mean, I always thought it was an interesting, and to hear it from Dr. Phil of all people was just so funny, because he had talked about the opioids, but then he had led it up to talking about like when he prescribes medicine, and that like he really tries to avoid doing that because normally there's something that can't fix it but make it better. And he's like, you know, you should talk about that first. You know, and I thought that was an interesting perspective, especially to hear from such a meme. Like,
yeah, he kind of is a meme. I'm not particularly fond of Dr. Phil. I don't like how he kind of like, I feel like he kind of like preys on like the cases that he uses. It feels exploitative, you know?
Yeah, yep. Like anything that's on television.
Yeah,
like
like it's not cool,
inherently taking advantage.
I feel like this is stuff that should be talked about with a therapist. It shouldn't be on national television.
Yep. And that's what I thought too. But in that same interview,
but he obviously knows a lot about this that
the stuff that he's talking. At least he seems to be well educated.
Yeah.
But he had said that, I think it was with the Cash Me Outside girl, like the most famous one that he had. Like this girl was just super crazy.
I remember.
Yeah. And but he had done another interview with no audience. Like no nothing, just him and her, just talking, like trying to do like actual therapy. Like he actually pursued that case and was like, no, like I know this is a meme, like, and I know you're doing this to get fame, but this is disgusting.
Yeah,
like, like you need to not be this way. And then hearing that was just like, go Dr. Phil, go. You know, you may be.
I wonder what happened. What happened to her anyway? She's still a thing.
I thought she started making music.
I know she made music. It was awful.
Music. She made music, quote unquote. But yeah, I can't. They played that at my school dance, like my high school dance.
Really?
And there's like really gross profanity in that song.
Really?
In the songs that they make, and they played it uncensored. That was unbelievable. Like my jaw dropped. I was like, wait, are we really listening to this?
Did you go to like a big school, a small school?
No, really small school. Where like
that's interesting.
Most of the music comes out of like the school Chromebook, and like it's just like your HDFS teacher just plugs it in and like teaches. Yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah, super.
That's interesting.
I know, small school stuff. Where'd you come from?
Cedar Rapids.
So it's kind of a big
one of the bigger cities in Iowa.
For Iowa, yeah, it's big.
So I was a suburban kid. We lived in the suburbs.
So how many people did you graduate with then?
300-400.
Wow, yeah.
Big school. And there's three big schools in Cedar Rapids.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, there's Jefferson, which is the one I went to. Then there's Kennedy, which all the rich kids go to. And then there's Washington, where like the more like urban kids go to.
Okay. Okay, so you're just like right in the middle.
Jefferson's like right in the middle. It's got kind of a little bit of everything.
Yeah, yeah. That's insane. Because I graduated with 60 people.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest class that Madrid had ever had.
I can tell you, sitting through that graduation ceremony.
Oh yeah, that was a nice one because I used to think they were long, but then I was just imagining like, what if there are 1,000 kids here? Like,
yeah,
what if you went to
I can only
California?
imagine how the graduation school for college is going to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I went to my older brother's graduation, and that was like 3 hours.
Oh boy.
Yeah, at UNI.
I wonder if I could just skip that.
Yeah, I wonder if I can bring earbuds and just like watch something on my phone while I was just going.
You probably could get away with listening to podcasts.
Oh yeah, listening to Spotlight.
Yeah.
That's the plug.
Yeah.
All you graduates, you better be popping on some
podcasts. Yeah.
I actually have a guest who is graduating next semester, so I'll see if he can run by the run by Spotlight. But yeah, it's so cool having like guests on for a second time. It's like I'm having like a fan base almost.
Yeah.
Of people who, like I have a pool of people. It's like, I'm thinking about having a conversation with James today. You know what I mean? That's like really cool. Just like, let's have a conversation with someone who has a different perspective, like a completely different perspective from me. I wouldn't say it's completely different. I imagine we agree on a lot of things. But,
probably.
Yeah, I imagine we disagree on a couple things too, but like, that's the big thing. Like, we need to be able to have a conversation because otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why even believe something if you can't?
Right. Can't defend it.
If you can't talk about it. So let me check where we're at here. Because I think we've been going on for about an hour now. Yeah, hour exactly. That's awesome. I think I'm gonna let you go because I gotta go eat. I haven't eaten in like 6 hours.
Yeah,
so.
I haven't eaten all day either. So.
Dude, look at us twins. Is there any plugging?
Right. Well, like I said, we're looking for people who might be interested in taking up the leadership of the Atheist and Agnostic Society. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and send me an email. My email is jsanford, JSANFORD @iowastate.com or .edu. Yeah, and I can like get that all set up and I'll help you. Obviously, I'll help train like what it's like to be a leader. It looks really good. Having a leadership position in a club on campus looks really good on a resume, a CV, or for your graduate school. I think Iowa State even has like a thing you can like download of all like your positions and your activities in clubs to add to your CV.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's actually really cool.
At least I know they did a couple years ago. They talked about it at Club Fest. So yeah, that's so. Even if
there are other incentives than just
there are other incentives than just being the president of a club.
Yeah.
Also, you'll get invited to be on podcasts.
Yes. Yeah. You'll be the next guest. Whoever you train, your Padawan, you can bring up here.
It'd be fun to have like if I find somebody to have like both of us on at the same time.
That would be super cool. Yeah. Both the people like the master and the student on the podcast. It'd be a dream come true. But is there anything else you'd like to say for the audience?
Oh, not really.
Yeah, but
have a good Christmas break.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. If I release this on Christmas, I don't know what the schedule will be, but Merry Christmas, or I guess Merry Not Christmas also, whatever you want to. Yeah, Happy New Year. Whenever this comes out, be happy. That's all we're saying. So, it was nice talking with you, James.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
So we'll do another.
All right.
Alrighty.